They were involved with another person. Not because you were not enough, not because you were easy to replace, but because something inside them was not ready to face what was real and honest. And now they carry something they can no longer ignore or hide. What they want to say is not simple. It is not comfortable for them. Because while their body was somewhere else, a part of their emotions never fully left you. And that truth has become harder and harder for them to deny with time. Have you ever felt like something between two people never fully ended, even when everything on the surface said it was over? Like something stayed open in the background of your thoughts, quietly present, never fully closing. That is where they have been. Not fully in the past, and not fully free from it either. More like living in a space where truth was delayed, not erased. Because real connection does not just disappear. It waits, it stays, and eventually it asks to be seen clearly, without excuses, without confusion. They chose what felt safe instead of what was true for them at that time. They moved toward what felt familiar instead of what quietly pulled at something deeper inside them. They held on to what was easier to manage instead of what could have changed them in a real way. In doing that, they convinced themselves that comfort meant peace, even when a part of them kept questioning that choice in silence. They stayed where nothing demanded too much, where emotions could be controlled, where they did not have to risk too much of themselves. But deep down, they always knew something meaningful had been left behind, something that required courage they were not ready to give back then. And once that awareness began to form, it did not fade away. It stayed. It showed up in quiet moments, in evenings that felt heavier than they should, in pauses during conversations, in the silence where their thoughts became louder than everything around them. That feeling did not demand attention, but it also did not leave. It stayed in the background, steady and persistent, reminding them that something inside them was still unresolved. No matter how much they tried to move forward, that awareness followed them, quietly shaping how they experienced their days. Over time, life started to feel repetitive, manageable, but limited, like they were going through motion instead of growth. They began to notice how much of themselves they had been holding back just to keep things simple. They avoided deeper emotions. They avoided difficult questions. They avoided anything that might force them to face what they truly felt. Slowly, that created distance within them. Not distance from others at first, but distance from themselves. A feeling of being present in life, but not fully connected to it. And eventually, that distance became impossible to ignore. What they had with the other person may have looked stable from the outside, but it did not carry depth. It did not carry the emotional weight that once existed in what they shared with you. Because what they shared with you reached something deeper, something that stayed longer than they expected, something they could not simply erase by walking away. Real connection does not disappear just because someone leaves it. It stays in memory, in emotion, in awareness, quietly waiting to be acknowledged again. And over time, those feelings return. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in small reminders that something important once existed between you. At some point, they stopped avoiding that truth. Not in one dramatic moment, but slowly, in an honest way that was not easy for them. They realized they were never fully present in the place they chose to stay. Something was always missing, something they kept pushing aside. They also realized that even when they told themselves they had moved on, a part of them had not. A part of them was still emotionally unfinished with you. That realization did not come easily. It came with honesty. The kind of honesty that removes excuses and leaves only truth. If you have ever felt like a connection never truly ended, even when someone was with someone else, then this is the kind of awareness they reached too. They understand now that they never truly gave that connection a real chance. Not because it lacked meaning, but because it required courage they did not have at that time. The courage to be emotionally open. the courage to risk rejection, the courage to feel something deeply without knowing the outcome. Instead of stepping into that, they stepped away. They chose safety over growth, even though part of them knew what they were leaving behind. Now that awareness carries a message they could not express before. Not perfect, not polished, not asking for sympathy, just a quiet truth they cannot ignore anymore. They see clearly now what you represented in their life, and they also see what they were avoiding in themselves. Because what they were running from was not only you, it was parts of themselves they were not ready to face honestly. That realization changes something inside them in a lasting way. It changes how they see their past. It changes how they understand their choices. It changes what they now know about emotional truth. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is permanent. Once someone sees their own avoidance clearly, they cannot unsee it. They cannot go back to believing it did not matter. They cannot return to pretending it was nothing. Whether they act on it or not, something inside them has already shifted. The illusion they once held has broken. And that brings both discomfort and clarity at the same time. There is no easy escape from that kind of awareness. It stays. What matters most for you to understand is this: none of this reflects your worth. None of this means you are not enough. It reflects their readiness, their emotional capacity at that time, their fear, their timing, not your value. You were not replaced by someone better. You crossed paths with someone who simply was not ready to meet you at the level you were offering. And now they are facing the result of their own choices, carrying the weight of what they avoided, delayed, and left unresolved. Whether they say it out loud or keep it inside, that is what remains. Not a dramatic return, not a perfect confession, but a quiet truth settling over time. You were real to them, and real connections leave marks that cannot be erased by distraction or convenience. They now understand that their choices were driven by fear, not by a lack of awareness of what you meant. They knew, but they were not ready. And that fear created distance, inconsistency, and hesitation. Things that now feel heavier in hindsight than they did in the moment. Now that fear has been faced internally, it has turned into awareness. And awareness brings responsibility, even if nothing can be changed. They carry that clarity now, quiet, heavy, and persistent. It does not fade just because time passes. In that clarity, they see what they ignored. They see what they delayed. They see what cannot be undone. They also see how their silence affected someone who deserved honesty, presence, and real effort. This awareness does not bring comfort. It brings understanding. The kind that stays in the mind without needing repetition. It reminds them of every moment they chose distance over truth. Every moment they chose hesitation over honesty. And this is not a request for anything to return. It is not asking for reconciliation. It is not asking for another chance. It is simply recognition. A moment of honesty that comes after reflection and emotional growth. They now recognize the strength you had, the emotional openness you showed, the honesty you expected and deserved. And with that recognition comes both respect and regret. Respect for you, and regret for themselves. That regret is not loud, it is not visible, it is quiet. It shows up in thoughts they cannot fully control, in moments of silence, in memories they do not fully let go of, in awareness that does not leave them. It stays with them and shapes how they understand everything that happened between you. What they want you to understand most is that this is not about missing comfort or familiarity. It is something deeper than that. It is about finally recognizing what real emotional connection feels like, and realizing it cannot be replaced or dismissed easily. Some part of them was always aware of you, even when they tried to move differently. That awareness never fully left. It only grew into something clearer over time, something they can no longer deny within themselves. They are not asking for forgiveness. They are not trying to force a response. They are simply holding the truth of what they now understand. No rewriting the past, no changing what happened, only acceptance of what was real. They are no longer running from what they once avoided, no longer distracting themselves from what they did not want to face. They have confronted their emotional distance, their hesitation, and their fear of vulnerability. And through that, one thing has become clear. The person they hesitated to fully show up for was you. That truth now carries weight that cannot be ignored. It stays with them. It shapes how they see connection from now on. Even if nothing changes outwardly, even if nothing is acted upon, the awareness remains. Because now they see you clearly, not as an option, not as something replaceable, but as something real they were not ready for at the time. And that realization does not leave them. It follows them into how they think, how they choose, and how they understand emotional truth moving forward. What comes next is no longer confusion for them. It becomes awareness, it becomes choice, and it becomes responsibility toward their own emotional honesty. Take a moment with this, and sit with it fully. Allow yourself to feel the weight of everything that has already happened, and everything that may still unfold ahead in your journey. Let it sit with you for a moment, without rushing it away. What you have lived through is not small, and what you are becoming because of it is not small either. There is meaning in the experience, even if you cannot see all of it clearly right now. Let yourself acknowledge both the pain of the past and the possibility that still remains open for your future. Both can exist at the same time without cancelling each other out. Trust your instincts more than anything else that tries to pull your attention away from yourself. Trust that inner voice that has been with you even in silence, even when things felt confusing or uncertain. You have developed strength over time, not in theory, but through real experience, through real situations that shaped how you see people and how you see yourself. That strength is not something you need to search for, it is already inside you. It has been built slowly through everything you have survived and everything you have learned. Deep down, you already know what feels right for you. You may not always say it out loud, but inside there is a clear sense of truth that keeps showing itself again and again. You already understand what you deserve in relationships, in respect, in emotional presence, and in consistency. Now, with full awareness of your own growth and also awareness of what others have or have not done, the next step can be taken with more clarity. It can be taken with calmness, confidence, and steady self-respect that does not depend on anyone else's approval. On the surface, it may look like someone is fully committed elsewhere or focused completely in another direction in life. Their actions might suggest distance, separation, or emotional shift. But emotionally and psychologically, a part of a person does not always move in a straight line. A part of them can still remain connected to something they never fully understood, never fully processed, or never fully resolved. This is not about betrayal in a simple or dramatic sense. It is about the deeper and more complex nature of human attachment, fear, memory, and emotional development that changes slowly over time, often without clear awareness. What makes this situation powerful is how strongly fear influences decisions, often without people realizing it in the moment. Fear can sit quietly in the background of choice-making and still shape everything. It can affect direction, timing, and emotional openness more than logic or intention does. Many people believe they are acting fully consciously, but fear can quietly guide the direction of their decisions in ways they only understand much later when they look back. There is fear of closeness that makes someone pull back even when they care. There is fear of vulnerability that makes emotional honesty feel unsafe. There is fear of losing control that creates distance even in moments that could bring connection. And there is also fear of facing one's own emotional truth, which is often the deepest fear of all. When these fears are present, a person may divide their attention or avoid what they truly feel inside without fully realizing why they are doing it. In those moments, they may move toward other connections or distractions, not because of real love or deeper emotional truth, but because of comfort and avoidance. Sometimes it is easier for a person to stay busy with something new than to sit with something unresolved from the past. Distraction can feel safer than reflection, even when reflection is exactly what is needed for growth. At the same time, the person they were once deeply connected to does not disappear from their internal world. Even if they do not talk about it openly, even if they act as though it is no longer there, the presence remains in subtle ways. It shows up in memories that return without invitation, in quiet comparisons they do not speak about, and in unspoken thoughts that stay in the background of their mind. This internal presence shapes their emotional world in ways that are not visible on the outside, but are still strongly felt within. Regret slowly becomes part of this process when someone avoids emotional truth or delays a real connection that mattered. Over time, they begin to feel the outcome of what was not faced directly. It is not always immediate. It often comes later, quietly, in reflection, in silence, or in moments where distraction is no longer available. That is when clarity begins to form. This realization is not just about missing someone in a surface-level way. It is deeper than that. It is about seeing the choices that were made, understanding the fear that influenced those choices, and recognizing the opportunity that was not fully valued when it was present. It becomes a clearer understanding of emotional responsibility, even if that understanding arrives later than expected. This understanding does not appear quickly. It builds slowly over time. It becomes stronger each time a person is honest with themselves instead of avoiding their feelings. And once this awareness fully forms, it does not disappear easily. It stays and continues to influence how they move forward and how they understand what truly matters in their life going ahead. Comment real if this message just hit you deeply and brought up emotions you thought were already settled. Sometimes words reach places inside us that we did not expect to open again. That is part of reflection and part of emotional growth as well. This kind of regret is powerful because it forces a person to face accountability, humility, and inner truth that cannot be ignored. It is not comfortable, but it is meaningful. It pushes a person to look at themselves honestly, without excuses or avoidance. That process can feel heavy, but it is often the beginning of real change. It does not allow easy escape or quick distraction from what is real. Instead, it creates a moment where someone must face their own choices and see the impact those choices had on others. At the same time, growth is never happening on only one side. It is not limited to one person alone in the situation. While one person is learning to face fear, accept responsibility, and understand emotional truth more clearly, the other person is also changing in their own way. They are learning to protect their peace, set stronger boundaries, and value their self-respect more deeply than before. Even when it requires distance, even when it feels difficult, that distance becomes part of their growth. This creates a situation where both individuals evolve at different speeds, but still move in similar emotional directions over time. Life does not always keep people at the same pace, but it does allow growth on both sides, even if it happens separately. When clarity finally arrives for one person, the other may already have reached a different level of awareness and emotional strength. This shift changes everything about how any future interaction would feel. It is no longer based on confusion or emotional instability. Instead, it becomes something more grounded and intentional. If there is ever a reconnection, it would not come from emotional dependence or uncertainty. It would come from clarity, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. Both people would no longer be standing where they once were emotionally. Even if memory remains, their internal states would be different. Even when someone appears to move forward in their external life, parts of their inner emotional world can still stay connected to what was not fully understood or resolved. That connection does not always disappear quickly. It continues to influence how they define happiness, meaning, and emotional fulfillment in subtle but real ways. This is why sometimes there is a difference between what a person shows to the outside world and what they actually feel inside. There can be a quiet gap between appearance and internal truth. This gap is not always intentional, but it becomes more noticeable as self-awareness grows. At the same time, the person who once asked for honesty and emotional presence is also growing stronger. They are not waiting in the same emotional place anymore. They are becoming more grounded, more self-aware, and more certain of their own value as a person. They are learning to trust themselves more deeply. They are learning to listen to their instincts without second-guessing every feeling. They are moving forward with more clarity in each step they take. This kind of growth ensures that if any reconnection ever happens, it will not come from confusion, but from strength and balance. This shared growth becomes important because it prevents the repetition of old emotional patterns. It helps both individuals avoid going back into the same confusion, the same uncertainty, and the same emotional imbalance that once created distance between them. It allows any future interaction to be based on awareness instead of confusion, and on emotional maturity instead of instability. That changes the entire meaning of connection if it ever returns again. Another truth becomes clear through this process. Emotional presence is not only about physical closeness. A person can be physically present in one place and still emotionally connected somewhere else in their inner world. That emotional connection can remain active through memory, thought, and quiet reflection. In the end, everything returns to awareness, growth, and truth that lasts beyond temporary emotion. What was once unclear becomes more visible over time. What was once avoided becomes something that can no longer be ignored internally. At the same time, you are also no longer the same person you were at the beginning of this experience. You are becoming more grounded in yourself. You are more aware of your value, more aware of your emotional needs, and more aware of what you will no longer accept in your life. You are learning to trust your instincts more fully. You are learning to move forward without needing constant reassurance from others. You are learning to stand in your self-respect without needing validation to confirm your worth. What this creates is not a story of loss or return, but a deeper understanding of what was real, what it meant, and what it required from both sides. It becomes clarity instead of confusion, and truth instead of uncertainty. You represented something genuine, something meaningful, something that required emotional courage to hold on to properly. That truth has now been seen, even if it was recognized later than expected. But your life does not pause for someone else's realization. You continue forward with clarity, strength, and deeper understanding of what you deserve and what you will no longer accept. Stay grounded in your truth and trust the growth you have gone through. Let your decisions come from clarity, not from old emotional confusion that tries to pull you backward. What is meant for you will align with your honesty, your presence, and the effort you naturally give. Anything that cannot meet you at that level will naturally fall away without force. Comment which part touched you the most and subscribe for more messages about emotional truth, growth, and self-worth.